Hi, everyone. Thank you all for your patience. Welcome to today's conversation. We have an amazing panel lined up for you all. Today's topic is how to organically vet and build a diverse team. We are talking diversity in multiple aspects, and this is going to be such an awesome and valuable conversation. We have Tarek Naily with Kellen Flax, Christian Miller with Poplar Ventures, and Kara Mason, COO of Brainstem University. And I'm going to go ahead and bring them up to join me. Hi, everyone.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. So I'm going to give the viewers just a little housekeeping really quickly before we get started. Please make sure that you're conversing with us in the comments and that you're adding questions because at the end of the conversation, we want to make sure that we're able to get all of your questions answered or as many as we possibly can, as well as see what you all have to say on the topics that we're going to discuss today. So to get started, I like to have the panelists introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about all the awesome things that you have going on because you can introduce yourself a lot better than I can. So I'm just going to go in order of how I see you on the screen. So Christian, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey everybody, I'm Christian Miller. I'm principal at Poplar Ventures. Poplar is a early growth stage venture capital firm based in Louisville. We focus on cloud technology companies. We focus on Middle America and supporting entrepreneurs here. Prior to that, spent 4 years in private equity, working out of Detroit for a strategic-backed private equity arm, and was an early growth investor in several companies, including Carlots, that my firm led the Series B for and helped take public in 2021.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. Tarek?
Hey, everybody. Tarek Naily, founder of Kalen Flax. We're a human-centered design company. We work with everyone from NGOs and foundations globally to tech companies here in Louisville. We're partners with groups like Zoom and Stellantis. So everything from your small founder-only startup to some of the big cos. So, but really glad to be part of this conversation this morning.
Awesome. Thank you. And Kara?
Hi, so I'm Kara Mason, COO of Brainstem. I'm in charge of hiring at Brainstem and in charge of our internal community. Brainstem is an edtech company. We built a metaverse for education, and our largest partner is JCPS. So we partner with JCPS back in December, actually, for Hour of Code Week. So we built the first metaverse for the district, and we had schools, families, students all join us there. So that's what we see. We're building the future of education, and we believe that's in the metaverse.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. So I have a pretty extensive list of questions to ask you all today. So we're going to jump right on in. And this particular question is targeted towards everyone. So what's your favorite team that you've been a part of and why?
I can go first on that one. So that question is exciting for me because it goes back to high school. I'm from Louisville, DuPont Manual grad. And DuPont Manual, the Dreamers Step team. And that has been it was just an amazing experience being part of that team. I didn't play sports growing up. So that was my first time being with the team, working towards a goal. And I mean, we practiced so hard. We won a ton of competitions, and just that camaraderie and that drive, led me to join sorority, led me to be a part of startup life. I'm addicted now to that team feel and being a part of a team to achieve a goal.
I love that. I'm a manual grad also.
Awesome.
All right, Tarek or Christian?
Go for it, Christian.
Yeah, I would have to say the Carlots team was my favorite team to be around. and be a part of. They all came from very diverse backgrounds, and had this issue that they experienced in the same used car lot that they come together and solved. And that was, gosh, 9, 10 years ago. And relative to this topic of conversation, diversity and inclusion was like at top of their minds in everything they did and how they built their organization. And I remember they would do town halls twice a week before town halls were common around, how do they build culture and values. And they always, were inclusive of everybody in those conversations, even if you were an analyst, trying to have a conversation with the CEO about the vision of the company. And I think that's a leadership quality that a lot of people lack, in valuing other opinions and creating that inclusive environment. And so I always enjoyed and loved being part of that type of team.
Mm-hmm. Love that.
Yeah, I'm going to give an answer that's not as specific as a team, but it's because I've had this in a few. I don't know if I could say my favorite. I've had this happen on a few teams that I've been a part of, and this is a really big part of Kale and Flax. But I think operating from an asset based approach and how we see each other as a team, it just does wonders to the work, to the mental health of team members, to productivity, to client or project or deliverable outcomes. Operating from a place of kind of constant complaining, and I'm not talking about complaints that are fair to bring up. That's different. I feel like there are like conflicts in the workplace you have to address, but just that approaching things always from a negative viewpoint really can sink the team in a lot of ways. And if you have a 10-person team, you have one person who just brings a sense of negativity to what we're doing or how we're tackling issues, it can really affect left to right, top to bottom the organization. And so just really kind of bringing on new team members who have a positive outlook. That doesn't mean that you can't have a critical eye on things. I want to be very clear. There's a difference in complaining and looking at things with a strong eye and saying these are things we need to fix or improve. I think that's super important to an organization. But operating from a place of like positivity, even if you're not fully optimistic and bubbly about it, just operating from a place of like, where can we go? What can we do? And moving forward, I think I've been blessed to be on quite a few teams that was the culture, and those are always the best places to work.
Right. So, of course, we've all had our fair share of not so great teams also. And we're not going to skip over that because it's important for people to understand why it was the worst team that you've been on. So what is the worst team that you've been on and why? And you don't have to say a name in particular, but tell us why the particular team was the worst team you've been on.
I think for me, the teams that are my least favorite are when people don't stick to the plan. So I'm someone that I live and die by a plan, because if I don't write it down, I'll forget. And I think that when you operate off of a plan and you know what everyone else is doing, it builds trust that someone's going to follow through. So I think one of the most frustrating experiences I had is just anytime we come back to the team for a meeting, someone has gone off somewhere else and they're doing tasks that aren't specific to what they said they would do in the plan. And so just sticking to a plan, making sure that all roles are clear and all deliverables are clear from each team member, I think just makes for an easier experience to build trust and hold everyone accountable.
Do y'all have anything to add to that about the worst team you've been a part of and why?
Yeah, I'll add that where there's a lack of trust, it can really deteriorate things quickly. I was just telling this story. I became VP of a startup and realized about a weekend that there were cameras throughout the building, and that the owner investor of the company checks to see if people were working at their desk throughout the day. Now they had told me I can make whatever changes I want, right? And so the first thing I did was I unplugged out the cameras and got rid of them. And it took about a week of arguing for him to get it. But when you have a lack of, and that's like that's a very extreme view. And I didn't stay at that company very long, as you could probably tell that was not a healthy work environment for anybody. Yeah. But when you have a lack of trust for your team, it isn't just that, the deliverable comes up a little bit short. It's like, again, top to bottom, left to right. It affects the organization. Teams start talking in kind of cliques and silos. People start losing trust. So you're even if you have a lack of trust of 3 people on your team, the 3 people you do trust don't know if they're in your crosshairs, right? So I think just having a very open space, allowing people to really express themselves if there's a grievance or there's an issue, or if they don't feel comfortable, or if they're struggling, or if they're failing at something, like celebrating failure a little bit and saying, like, if you're failing at something, wave the white flag and ask for help now, instead of this sort of very top-down, approach of trust being earned by kind of surveillance or by pressure always. And I think that for me has always been a key indicator of a bad work environment, is where not being able to trust your teammates to swing for the fences with you really hurts whatever outcomes you're going towards.
Yeah, I agree with both those perspectives, and I would take it a layer deeper in my experiences, to where, because there are some times where there can be trust instilled in you to go deliver outcomes, yet the authenticity and loyalty around that trust is not always there. So you may go, basically they go make you do the work for you and then don't reward you at the back end, because you think that the authenticity is there, but it's really not. And so I think that's something that has changed a lot and has been top of minds for startups, especially today, and the development of ecosystems. But authenticity and loyalty, to me, are 2 of like these belief systems that has been lost along the way of getting things, because people just wanted to trample people to get where they could get on top. And I think really at the heart of everything is people and collaboration, and you have to be authentic and loyal to have that succeed.
I agree with all of that. So as you all and as people think about starting to build your team, you've started the company, you have a foundation, so to speak, and you're ready to hire support. What are some things that you think about and that you think others should think about as they start to build their teams?
I'll jump in, since I keep getting to go second or last. I think you have to be really honest with yourself about how you want things to flow when you're starting out. If you are thinking about building your team purely off of a function, you might get some of that function, but you're going to miss out on all the other juice of building a team. Finding people who have a very niche technical skill, for example, is something a lot of startups need. But taking the time to hire the right person who's going to actually think about, from a business development or sales or consumer viewpoint, tied along with their technical skill set, is a big piece of value. And then, part of why we're here on this call is true diversity, true inclusion being a part of building a team. If that's what you want, we get hit up a lot by, and gosh, I hope this doesn't like just take a tangent on the conversation too early, but we get hit up a lot about how did you build a diverse team? And I'm like, well, I'm going to be really honest with you. You have to live it first. If that's part of your life, that you have a inclusive network of friends, whether that's real friends in real life or work acquaintances, it naturally can feed into it, into your workload, right? Because nothing's better than, hey, you're hiring for so-and-so and actually know someone who's super talented. Let me connect you all. That's an amazing hire, 80% of the time, when there's a personal reference and a personal connection. And so when building out a supported team, I think you got to be really honest about, from the beginning, what company culture do we want? How diverse can we strive for in the Louisville market, maybe specifically? And then you've got to really put in the work to go find that talent, from a technical standpoint, from an inclusive standpoint, from a well-rounded people, standpoint. And you got to be intentional. And what I see a lot of times is, once you have 10 employees, then you go, hey, we're missing diversity. Can we get some help? And I'll just be really upfront with you. If there's a company that has 10 employees that are all the same, maybe there's one difference between each employee, gender or hair color or something. I'm going to say, like, honestly, that is going to be an environment I'm not going to want to work from the get-go. So you're going to struggle to find diverse talent if you're not naturally connected to it, but also it's going to be hard to recruit. You haven't created an environment where diversity is already at the forefront. So it's a chicken and egg situation. I think you got to be really intentional about, for new companies, getting it right as best you can from the bat.
So you hit a couple of points that we are going to come back to here in a little bit. Kara or Christian, do you have anything to add to that?
Go for it, Kara.
I got you.
Yeah, I was going to add that really helped when we were building our team was we spent a lot of time writing descriptions of the roles that we wanted to fill. And then we thought a lot about what is going to make that person successful. Because for so long, like Ricky, our CEO, he was a solo founder for like the first year of Brainstem. And then David and I joined at the C level, but we were already friends, for a year almost. But when we were making that next hire and we were casting that wide net, we put an ad out on Indeed to cast that wide net, but we really wanted to make the job description specific so that we could attract the right person. So that took a lot of internal thinking, like, okay, what is this person going to do day to day? And then what do we need to set up in place on our team to make sure that they're successful? So is it a handbook that they need? Is it, how much training do they need ahead of time? And when you're early in a startup, it's really tough because we're kind of building as we're going along. And so what we would really like is, hey, we like you. Can you just kind of join our group and meld with us? But it was super critical that we really wrote out those specific duties and had a specific person in mind before we even went out to search. And I think that's what helped us find a great fit because we knew what the shape of that puzzle piece should look like as far as skill set and what they do.
Yes.
Yeah, the only thing I would add on to that is, especially early on in your team, I think a lot of startups and founders sometimes get lost in the problem they're solving and don't look to establish some of the foundational pillars of the business. Like, what is your mission? What are your values? And to me, I think doing those two things first are very important because more times than not, people you hire early on are going to wear multiple hats and do multiple activities and likely grow too. They could potentially become the next CEO of the organization once you're large or be part of the C-suite, whatever it is. And you really have no idea when you first hire that person. But what you will know is if they're true to your values or have similar values as you and a similar mission and are passionate about that mission, they will have the motivation to grow with you and be their best selves and also represent your company in the best way that you want it to be represented. And I think identifying talent from that perspective can be a valuable thing early on in the development of your company.
Yes, I agree with what all of you all said. And it wasn't until I entered the startup world myself that the idea of culture and mission and values was really emphasized because I think that that's the missing piece when it comes to working for an actual corporation. So I'm also learning as a founder myself that building your supporting team and then building your founding team, so your founding partners or co-founders, looks very different. So, Christian, as someone who invests in startups, what are some things that you think founders should start thinking about in order to build a founding team that works to their benefit when it comes to them growing, scaling, and looking for funding?
I would say, this is going to be contrary to your question, don't feel obligated to have a co-founder. I think there's this maybe misconception through a lot of the media presence around startups and what happens in the Valley and in Boston, and that like you need this co-founding team to go get things done, and you really don't. That doesn't mean you can't have advisors, and that doesn't also mean you can't have core team members But that co-founder is a very coveted relationship that you're stuck with for life. Same way that I view investors and startups, right? We constantly compare it to being a marriage. And that is what your co-founder is, because you're giving away a lot of equity of your company. Now, if they're there with you from day one and you are brainstorming to come up with the idea, I think that's a different component versus saying like, oh, I have the idea, I have the solution, I need to bring somebody on board to help me go execute with it. And when it's in that paradigm, I think it's just important to really understand it. What is the cost benefit analysis of doing so? And so I want to start with that point, but then to directly answer your question, if you are going to go down that route, they need to complement you in many ways. And especially if there's like an industry knowledge component that you don't have, or a technical component that you don't have. Most co-founders are usually on the technical side. But like if you experience a problem and you know the solution to go do it, but you're not from that industry originally, me and Poplar, one of our core investing premises is founder market fit. Did that founder come from the industry? Do they have the knowledge and relationships to go succeed very quickly in their execution strategy? And if they don't, I would say 9 times out of 10, not to say they can't succeed, but it's a lot harder for them to succeed. And so when thinking about co-founder and your founding team, if those technical and industry components are missing, I would focus a lot of your attention on how do you round that out.
Okay. Tarek and Kara, do you have anything to add to that?
I'll just say from Kale and Flax being company number 8, I've had my fair share of very positive co-founding experiences and a few tough ones. And I think that's part of entrepreneurship. And you learn to, not take those things personal when they're tough. I think, there are a lot of ways you can incentivize someone to be a very locked in initial team member that's got your back. Economic incentives, cultural incentives, that again aren't necessarily that are based on their continued employment and maybe some benefit after. And you can, with the help of your attorney, you can create those rules if you want, right? There's no government entity that's like, you can't give away that many vacation days. Like, so I think if you're really looking for someone to come and say, hey, can you come in and sink your teeth in this with me? 2 years, you'll get the economic benefit. And then if you want to leave, you can go, you can stay forever if it works out without them being a co-founder. There's a bunch of opportunities there. And I think you can, as long as communication's clear, I think you can allow someone to come in and say, hey, I think you have a lot of potential to potentially get some equity in this company. Let's see how the next 18 months go. Let's do check-ins and be honest with them about, if they're moving towards a position where, you can distribute some real, and I'm not talking like employee stocks, but like real equity in them. They may not be a co-founder. They may not have voting rights on the board. It may just be an economic, percentage of equity. But yeah, I think there's a bunch of creative ways that you can incentivize someone to help you get your idea off the ground or your company off the ground early stage.
Great advice. Kara, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. One thing that one of our co-founders actually started is a 1099 contract. And we just had such a great working relationship, great synergy, and it elevated from there. So I think you're totally right that you can get creative with how you bring someone on your team and to what capacity as sort of like, an internal vetting process.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So speaking of vetting, you helped me transition right into my next question. Thank you, Kara. How do you vet candidates when it comes to building your team while being mindful of your personal biases so that does not get in the way of you organically building diversity within your company? What does your vetting process look like?
I probably have a few. I'll start with just one because I don't want to hog the mic. I love to ask like, let's be real. What do you actually want? Like out of your career, out of your day, out of each day. I think it can be really overwhelming and intimidating to look at a job requirements list and then do 1 or 2 interviews and be like, this is a good fit. I just don't think I'm not saying anyone's not being honest. I just don't think it's an honest approach to like seeing a good fit. I think a really good way to find out if someone is a good fit is to let them really be able to express why it's a good fit, by going over what do they want to do on a day-to-day basis or on a week basis. And um, I have a big thing that I try to live with my life. I was just sharing with someone yesterday called anti-goals. There's a really awesome article, kind of if you want to share it with all the viewers eventually, or maybe I'll post in the chat, about anti-goals, that we spend so much of our life chasing potential goals, but the universe sometimes has other plans. And it's a lot easier to make a list of things you don't want to do. And those are like kind of like, in a way, boundaries almost. And I'd rather someone come and say, look, I'm down to do a lot of stuff. I'm down. You can throw me in the fire in tough situations. You can disappear for a week and let me run the company if you need to. But I don't want to do A, B, C, D, E. This is not my strength. And if you can get that out of someone, I feel like finding alignment can be really easy, a lot easier in the beginning. So I like to start off with kind of a very kind of like genuine conversation about, what does someone want from a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, basis, and try to figure out what's important to them.
Yeah, one thing we did too, because I think being early, it's important to have team members that have an entrepreneurial spirit. Because like you said earlier, you wear many hats when you're first in a company. So one thing that we looked for was, what is this person already doing in their free time? What projects do they have out there that they're already doing for no compensation? So do they have a really popular Clubhouse channel that they tune into weekly and host spaces there? Or, and we made sure that these projects, of course, were related to STEM. Being an education company, of course, we were looking for certain people with, have you taught before, things like that. But I think when you find employees that have interesting passions and they're working towards something outside of their job, those are usually really passionate and driven people. So that's something that we definitely looked for. So, when they say like, check out someone's social media or things like that, we definitely did that. But it was more to see, what are you doing with your spare time? Are you a driven person? Are you someone that has goals? Because we want people on our team that have goals outside of brainstem. Those are people that are dreaming big, that can bring big ideas to us. So we really just looked for dynamic people. And part of that interview process was, is there a project or a vision already that you have after reading about our company that you would suggest? And the people that we hired already had ideas just based on doing their research prior to the interview. So I think that's a big plus too, is when you ask those questions and get that feedback that someone is already thinking of themselves working with you, it's a good sign.
Yes. You have anything to add, Christian?
I think honestly the interviewing process needs a lot of reworking, and has a lot of legacy biases that are just unfortunate and also counterintuitive. And so, Poplar, we're not hiring right now, but we're gearing up for that process. And so it's just been top of mind because I know diversity and inclusion and venture capital is a hot topic right now. And I don't think resumes are relevant anymore. And this may be a controversial point, but you have to understand people's skill set. At the same time, like, there are so many powerful and talented people out there that you just need to get to know first on a very personal level, and then they can grow with you, and that can be from all types of different backgrounds, and honestly in the industry experiences as well, especially in our world. And so I would challenge anybody on this call and just in general to really think about how could you turn the hiring process on its head. And I think, Tariq and Kara have made some great points about how you can do that and understanding people on a very personal and intimate level. Because if you, again, have values that come together and are aligned on a vision, you can help mentor and coach people to be the best selves and succeed in a really powerful and great way. Then you're not going to tell that from a resume and not asking boilerplate questions in an interview in an office or a conference room. I just don't think that does what it should. And so take them out to coffee first and see if you actually like the person. Don't run them through the ringer of the interview process if you know you're not even going to like the person, right? So I would just challenge everybody to get to know people on an intimate and personal level, because it impacts people's lives in a very drastic way when you take these type of jobs in a startup type ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned industries, right? And in your industry, Christian, it tends to be pretty male heavy and pretty white. Um, Tara, in the tech industry, it's very male dominated also, extremely male dominated. Um, Tarek, you have an advantage because you're in a creative industry. So it's a little, I do think it works a little bit different, but I'm sure throughout your founder journey and your career, you run into pretty siloed industries also. So, what advice would you give founders, people in general who want to build a diverse team, but find themselves attracting talent that looks, thinks, or possess the same skills as them, especially when you're first starting to build a team, because it can be a little harder in order for you to build a team when you are only filling three positions, right? You typically go into your network that may look like you, have the same skill set as you. So, what advice would you give people who are trying to build a diverse team, but they feel like they're attracting talent that's very similar to who they are?
Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
I would just say cast a wide net and then keep an open mind. And the reason why I say this, because one of our team members, Gail, she applied back for a brainstem like instructor position in February that we put on Indeed. So we really had this targeted toward a college student or a recent college grad. They were going to be teaching an after school STEM program. And her resume, like, she was just amazing. On paper, she was a PhD in virtual instructional design, which at the time we had just started really putting together the pieces of our metaverse. So we were like, this would be amazing to have someone who has this experience. And she had taught at all these universities and everything, but all of her history, work history, was from Thailand. But it said she was located here. And so we thought, is this even real? You know, and the formatting was a little off. And so we're like, I don't know. Well, we came back around to it in June and we reached out to her. She's totally real. And she's amazing. Like, she's already written a textbook for us. She does social media marketing. She does podcasts like on our behalf in Asia. So like, she's incredible. And she's totally virtual. Like, we've never met her in real life. And this is from Indeed. And so that was just taking a chance and saying, you know, like, all of these biases came up when we read this resume, but we opened up and said, hey, we're going to sponsor the visa. You know, we're going to take a chance on someone that seems like this can't be real, but she's a total unicorn. So I would say just keep an open mind, because even Arunye, like, she's sponsored as well. She's Venezuelan and she's a recent college grad. So she's super stoked about working for Brainstem because her entire sponsorship program is tied to her working in the STEM field. So we knew we wanted to hire women, because part of our goal with Brainstem is to recruit more girls in STEM so that tech isn't so male heavy. So we knew we had to find women in STEM. And like you said, when you're looking in your network, no, there's not many women in tech here in Louisville, Kentucky. So we did cast that wide net. And also having like a virtual project-based workflow really helps. So we literally are looking for people, talent all over the world, because we don't care if you work during the day, if you work at night. We have 2 weekly team meetings that you have to attend, and the rest of it's project-based. So that really just opens the door to the candidates that we can hire.
That's super cool. Yeah, I think like, you know, one of the realities of building a diverse team can be, depending on your industry, to that point about, you know, is talent available with these skill sets that is diverse in my city? Like, if you know, to your point about like, you might have to cast a wider net, is I think you've got to be willing and intentional to say, okay, what inequities are hitting the talent pool to where they're not applying, right? Or they're not following, they don't have necessarily someone, you know, helping them design their super creative visual resume or whatever, right? Like what things are in their way. And so, you know, one thing I love about Christian said that we do at Kale and Flax is when we put out job postings or on our website, it says no resumes or CVs. And we ask for 2 things. We ask for your story, whatever that means to you, that you want to share, and then where it makes sense for the role, like some examples of your work. So a designer might send And we're very intentional. We ask for 2 to 3 pieces of your favorite work. And the reason why we do that is there are some super talented people who have gotten to work on really amazing projects who have an awesome portfolio just because they've already worked at an agency that had really cool clients. Mm-hmm. Well, if you've had some clients who kind of pushed you to do not as good of work, your portfolio is not going to be as strong. That doesn't mean you're less of a designer, right? Or less of a developer or less of a strategist. And so we really like to say, just send us a little bit of your work so we get a view of what you can do, where it makes sense, and then your story. And getting rid of even just that resume CV pressure allows people to show up their more authentic self, and it kind of levels the playing field. And I think if a person can articulate their story to you in a powerful way, I mean, I hate to break it to us all, but at the end of the day, we're all doing storytelling. Like accountants maybe aren't doing as much storytelling. They have to, but attorneys are doing storytelling. How you walk into your court case, right? How you handle mediation. And so your ability to communicate your story and get your point across and make an impact through an email to us is, for us, a really great leveling playing field for you to enter a conversation with us, number one. And then number two is, as a founder, as a hiring person, being willing to take a bet on someone, being realistic and saying, okay, this person's portfolio might not have been as XYZ, or maybe they didn't have the biggest internship, but if I was this person, would I want someone to take a bet on me? And I think you got to be willing to invest in, the Cincinnati Bengal, if you will, of the hiring candidates you have, the underdog, and say, hey, you add to our diversity, you have a different perspective, and that is a pro. You may have these 3 things less than another candidate, maybe some crazy internship that they had access to through a family member, right? Whatever. And be willing to take a bet and say, instead of going with the easier candidate who has maybe an additional credential, saying as a company, hey, we're going to invest in the underdog. And what you get out of someone you invest in, it covers the ROI on that is crazy. I say belief capital is the best capital before you get $1 million check. Like having someone hire you who believed in you when the very biased, very racist, very sexist algorithm of application websites don't, that's a relationship that can last a lifetime. So for us, those are 2 things that kind of help guide us.
Love that.
And a lot of great points. Yeah, I think trying to bring a lot of the stuff that's been said together, going back to, I think, what Tariq was saying initially when we started the conversation, it starts from your day-to-day living and who you are as a firm in general, right? So you can't really just say, I'm going to go hire for diversity just with that point. It starts, are you open to diverse opinions? Are you open to embracing a culture of diversity in general before you may even have that diversity on your team? And because otherwise, then it's not going to be, you're not going to get the most out of that. And I think that's unfortunate because that happens a lot. And so I think it starts from the beginning, and taking a chance is a big thing I'm very passionate about, because someone took a chance on me. I didn't have any experience in investing before I got into this industry. And, they didn't pay me anything, but I just worked my ass off because somebody gave me a chance. I think anybody will do that when you give them a chance. And so one, casting, doing the candidate solicitation outside of the traditional norms before, not after, right? So I think most people will do it through like Indeed.com and then go out. I would challenge you to not bias yourself with those employee candidates first, but rather go to the alternative routes that you would think about and be biased by the people who you are not initially targeting, and see what their talent profile like, what their candidacy profile is like. And then you can still go through the traditional means just to, maybe round it out from a candidate profile. But then I think taking away that biasy of everything that you guys were saying about the traditional, hiring processes through a resume and Indeed.com and all the other job boards will be a very enlightening experience. And then think outside the box, think creatively, and get to know people on a very intimate level. I mean, those are just things I'm very passionate about, and I think are great ways to approach it.
Right. I love that you all have all mentioned various ways to kind of stop taking a traditional approach to hiring and what you ask for from candidates that you're trying to bring onto your team. I think that to your point earlier, Christian, that traditional means of hiring really just allow you to have those biases, right? I mean, my name is Kiana, for Christ's sake. Like, we all know that as soon as people see my name on a resume, it's already assumed, okay, I know that she's not a white female. I'm not really sure what she is, but I know that she's not that. So speaking of traditional ways of promoting that you're hiring, yes, you have the Indeeds and things like that, but I know that now, especially because DEI is such a hot topic these days, trying to diversify industries, diversify teams, is like, I guess what you could say, the new wave, which it should just be how it is. And as someone who works, so I own a DEI company. I also lead DEI initiatives for Amplified. We have these new groups that have kind of formed out of need, out of frustration. I mean, one of the groups that we've worked with, Black UX, is amplifying the voices of Black UXers to get them in C-suite positions. What are some of the ways, and Tariq, I'm going to call you out a little bit because you taught me about building the kitchen cabinet. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about that. So what are some of the groups that you have found on different platforms such as LinkedIn, Facebook, even outside, that you would like to share as a resource in a way for people to take non-traditional routes to promoting when they're hiring so that they can start attracting new talent to their teams?
That's a good question.
I think that we all have
one thing I would say is, so, and I'll go back, because you were calling out venture capital, which I totally agree with you on. And I actually didn't even know this until I got into the venture capital industry, because I got my job through networking means, but most of the job postings are through these siloed, like, Slack channels or job boards that you can only know about if you're already in venture capital, which I find so ironic, because most of the hiring positions are analysts who aren't going to have those opportunities to see those job postings. And so I think leaning into your social channels and making it a very collaborative and open process, meaning when you share it on LinkedIn, tell everybody they can share this job post. Don't isolate or bias the post by saying this is the type of candidate you're looking for. Just say, we're hiring, focus on venture capital, we're hiring an analyst. Just say that, and then say, like, here, I need a story, or need some proof of building a model, let's say, or an investment thesis around any public company, something that's broadly available to everybody and that anybody can do, and then see what happens from there, versus, again, trying to stay within these silos that are not going to allow for diversity and inclusion to come through.
Yeah, I would say, as we're hiring, like, we're trying to go directly to the talent. So, tech talent is kind of what we're seeking now, developers. So, like, GitHub and Discord are the best areas for that. So when you look at, like, your company's mission, think about where the people who believe in your mission are. So Reddit is also a great place to find more people within your community. But I would definitely say Discord and GitHub, because there's proof of work there as well. So when you're looking for talent, like, even in graphic design, we have a lot of that, as a metaverse company. We're just checking those channels to see, like, what are people doing, who's working with the same tech stack that we are, and, where are they and what are their values? So that's a great way to connect with people.
Yeah, and I think you kind of brought it up. If you don't, it's a great question, because I'm really good, like, I don't really have a support group or or like an Instagram account I follow, at least for locally, like, that I can find. I would say, in order for you just to shape your thinking, I think there are plenty of really, even outside of Louisville, there's some really incredible founders who speak about their founding, raising capital, the early in their career hiring process, that just talk about it openly and consistently on social media. So I think taking a look at who you follow and maybe liking some of their posts in a row, so the algorithm kind of puts them front and center on Instagram, or or Twitter for you is one way just to kind of unconsciously on social be seeing messages from people from different experiences. But kind of, you brought up the kitchen, cabinet kind of thought. And that is essentially, one thing that I've heard a lot of complaints about in Louisville, specifically as a smaller city, is that let's say, for example, I'll be really specific. Let's say there's 10 Black women in Louisville and everybody comes to these 10 same Black women I need to hire someone diverse. And it's like, okay, is that fair to the 10 individuals? Absolutely not. To carry the burden of hiring for every company, right? Number one. But so I think we've got to stop that practice. If you find yourself going like, oh, I'm going to go to the most popular person I know in this, gender or race or religious category, I should probably stop and say, no, how can I be more intentional before I do that and drive them crazy? Because that's not, labor you all are getting paid for to carry for the city. And then I'd say from a sort of venturing out standpoint, one way to be a little bit softer, more intentional is to take some individuals from diverse companies who run diverse companies or have diverse circles. Say, look, I'm struggling. I want to go about this intentionally. How do you think I should increase diversity at my company, right? And build a little kitchen cabinet. And you have to let them hold you accountable, right? You have to let them hold you accountable and say, hey, where are you posting your jobs at right now? Well, I got it here, here, here. And I did these 7 interviews. Okay, how many of those interviews were diverse? Well, 1 out of the 7. Okay, so you asked us to be part of your kitchen cabinet, but you're not following through. And so I think, allowing yourself to have a safe space where no one's going to cancel you, where some folks can help you find your journey. Now, again, I know we're putting some labor on some of the diverse talent to help you, but I think if you're going about it more intentionally, more methodically, I do think it has, I think it pays off better and is more a genuine connection to those people helping you than just going to one person that everybody else goes to for their diversity problems. We got to really make sure that practice isn't happening in our, as founders and as venture capitalists and as leaders in our companies.
Mm-hmm. I wanted you to speak a little bit about that because I think it's such a great way. I know that earlier we were making the point that, if you don't have a diverse circle around you or network around you, then typically you only will attract people like you because that's what your circle looks like. And sometimes naturally so, because if that's the environment you grew up, that's just the pool of people that you have to tap into. But I love, to your point, when you are building your kitchen cabinet, it's intentional. So it's people that I know have built diverse teams, people that I know who have diverse networks, so that as I'm trying to put these things out there, I can always send them an email or a message like, hey, you all, this is what I'm trying to do. I would love your feedback or your help. And that's just like a quick way to be able to expand your network beyond what your personal network looks like for you. So that's why I wanted you to speak on that. I love that point. So to wrap up, I have 2 more questions. One is one that I'm not sure that people think about very often, but how does your branding of your company impact your ability to attract diverse talent? And what are some tips that you can give people when it comes to building their brands or rebranding when they feel like they need to or want to?
Yeah, I think you have to look at the faces in your advertising. So I'm in charge of social media too with Brainstem, and you have to be super conscious about the faces of the people that are in your ads, because I think that speaks a lot to your brand. And who you're selling to is also going to be who you attract to work for you. It's all a community. So we're looking at our customer base. What does our customer base look like? Because as you're bringing in talent, they're going to be working with your customers. So you have to think about the product that you're selling and who you're selling to when you think about the people that are going to work with you and the people that are working on that product. So we try to make sure that both ends are diverse. Outside of that, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is in marketing the faces that you have out there. But you really need a diverse team from the beginning because you want to make sure that your marketing message is something that's going to resonate well with people. And the best way to do that is to put that message in front of as many different eyes as you can before it goes out to the public. So I think that building a diverse customer base alongside building a diverse team, those things are going to go hand in hand and help each other.
Yeah, and I love that. And I would say, I think when you are approaching inclusion from an intentional place, I think you've got to lean in and be really authentic to what they're going to get once they've got the job. And so for us, on our careers page, we're very honest. Like, Kendrick Lamar is going to get played in the office every week, and we're a 4-day work week, and we believe in universal basic income. And we understand that gender and race are not a monolith, right? I mean, it's like, and so when you, it can be very tough for businesses, right? The classic business rule is like, don't talk religion or politics. And I'm not even talking about political parties, right? But I think what you can do is take stances on things that are important to you as a company. And that does two things. That filters out folks who are going to come in, get a job, maybe they're good at a technical skill. 3 months in, they're going to be like, I don't feel like I can be myself here. So you're kind of doing them a favor, letting them know ahead of time that what the company culture really is like. Not just it's a diverse, we're looking for rock stars, that lingo, but I'm talking about being realistic on what's on the other side. But then also, you're going to be a honeypot for the right talent. I'm not saying you have to like Kendrick Lamar's music to work at Kale and Flax. But I do think by a company saying Kendrick Lamar is our artist of choice in the office, I think that tells potential candidates how real they can be. As we use the Nirvana line, "Come as you are," right? So how real they can be as an employee of Kale and Flax is what we're really connecting with them on. It's not actually about who the artist is. And then I think how you talk about your employee perks and benefits. We're a 4-day work week. We're on a third year of that. Like I'm trying to make Louisville the 4-day work week city of America. If I can get some more people on board, but we don't just say, hey, go enjoy Fridays off, right? We talk about making an impact in your community with that extra day off. We talk about taking care of your mental health with that extra. We talk about taking care of family. We talk about being more well-traveled. So when you put your values out there, especially for diverse candidates who come oftentimes disadvantaged communities, not as a monolith, but the likelihood goes up, right? If you're talking about a minority group or gender pay group or whatever,
1 o'clock.
They might be coming in with a certain inequity. That's my laptop. Sorry, you all. And by putting your values out there, you're letting them know where you stand, and that they can be like an authentic, version of themselves when they apply, when they interview, when they communicate with you, and that can really help you land on the right candidates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as a venture capital firm, we don't do a lot of marketing, so I don't know if I have the best answer. But I'll say what we do is, again, we've established what our ethos is, and what our values are, and being authentic is one of those, but also fostering an environment of inclusion. And I think that's an inclusion of backgrounds, of culture, but also of opinions, being willing to accept alternative opinions and still have a meeting of the minds to execute at a very high level to succeed and create return. We have fiduciary responsibility to create returns for our investors. And I really truly think that you can do that through a very diverse opinion base. And, to your point, like being honest about who you are up front, but then also being honest about accepting the alternative to that to create this inclusive environment to succeed and move forward is the best that we can do. And have that be represented through our brand and through our ethos.
Awesome. So to round out our discussion today, are there any more resources that you all would like to share with the community when it comes to books, podcasts, social media pages, any type of resource that could help people when it comes to building their teams, building an effective team, building a diverse team, getting rid of unconscious bias, all the things? Any resources that you would like to share to finish us off?
Go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, I would challenge you. My main answer is once a week, whatever your normal podcasts or audiobooks or music, even whatever your traditional medium of educating yourself and just entertaining yourself, go do whatever the opposite is, right? And so I'll be fully transparent. I'm normally CNBC or Fox News but twice a week I force myself to watch CNN, so I have the entire perspective of what's going on in the world, not just from one perspective, but from everybody's perspective. And so I think that's a great way to get a diverse opinion, and not stick to just one silo to where you're biasing all your opinions based on that news source or that educational source. And then one book that I think is a very powerful book is Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb. And he challenges everybody in a very data and analytical way of how to accept alternative opinions to mainstream narratives. It's a long book, so just be ready for that. But it was a very powerful book for me.
Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Yeah. I guess the book that I would recommend would be Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. And he gets really into how your brain works and the biases that you have naturally as a human being and why we have them. So Kiana, earlier you spoke to, your name on a resume and why some people may reject that. I think Indeed has been so beneficial for us because, I'm the person hiring. So I'm not going to look at a name like Kiana and say no. And that's just naturally because of my upbringing. But what this book does is break down like why those biases are there, when they're good, and how you can overcome them. And he has like really specific exercises that you can do to make sure that you're not being biased, whether it's by a name or a skin color, or even by someone who comes in and does an amazing interview, how not to be blinded by a great first impression, so that you're not disappointed later when you hire that person. They didn't turn out to be who you thought they were from that one chance interview. So yeah, Thinking Fast and Slow is a great book just to understand how our brains work and gives practical exercises for how we can overcome that.
Awesome. Tarek?
Yeah, just for me, I'm like, there's a lot of great anti-racism books and business and self-help books. For me, I'm like, if someone asks me what book they need to read first to work on, I send them Autobiography of Malcolm X. That's my first read to anybody that I'm going to pass on, number one. And then one thing I just wanted to bring up as a resource for earlier is in targeting your ads, Instagram is a great way to get your job posting and express your company culture to diverse talent. You can, do it by city, by kind of cultural preferences or like pop cultural preferences to help draw in diverse talent. So don't be afraid to use social media as a way to draw people in to an Indeed post or to a LinkedIn, job application. So just wanted to circle back on that from earlier.
Yes. And I'll add to that a little bit to close us out. As we think about building teams and things like that, to your point, please use social media to your advantage. I think that there's something very powerful about being able to easily expand your network without even having to leave your home. So take the time, especially if you're anything like me, I'm an introvert. So it's easy to flock to people that make you feel comfortable when you're actually physically in a space at a networking event and things like that. So take the time to reach out to different types of people on social media, especially as we're talking like skills and professions and things like that. LinkedIn is a great one. People who don't look like you, people who live in different cities than you, people who possess different skills than you. Reach out, connect, chat so that you are expanding your network and you have a network that's very different from you to tap into when you're trying to build your teams. Also, at the bottom of the screen, you'll see that I have everyone's names listed. Connect with them on LinkedIn. Make all of us a part of your networks also. Thank you so much, Kara, Christian, and Tarek for being a part of our conversation. And thank all the viewers for watching and being open-minded to what we had to bring to the table today. Happy Black History Month, everyone. And I look forward to the next one, and we will chat soon. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.